Hey, this is Mr. Griffin, and welcome to this special retrospective edition of Random Thoughts. Today, I'm going to be focusing on my memories and what I think was so great about the cult classic from John Carpenter, They Live, starring the late Rowdy Roddy Piper and Keith David. Keith David, you might know for his voice acting work. He's done some acting. You might remember him as the sidekick of Steven Seagal in the film Marked for Death. You might best remember him as the voice of Spawn when Spawn the comic character was hot, for that adult animated series that was on HBO back in the 90s. And getting back to They Live, I remember I was a teen, you know, about maybe 14, 15 years old. No Holds Barred had just came out in the theater. And of course, I was never a full-blown Hulkamaniac, but I will admit this, and I will say this to my grave. Despite my personal feelings towards Hulk Hogan these days, Hulk Hogan is what got me into wrestling. And another character that I wanted to see get his butt handed to him by Hulk Hogan was the first heel that I ever hated, and that was Rowdy Roddy Piper. But over time, even though I didn't like Piper, I was like, you know, this guy's kind of cool in a way. And then later on, he became a fan favorite. Of course, I was mostly for the good guys back then. I really didn't I hated all bad guys. I didn't care how good they were. I was that simplistic. That's just the way my mentality was. I think the first bad guy I ever liked, really though, was Macho Man Randy Savage. But that's another discussion for another day. Getting back to They Live, when Piper was coming out with his movie They Live, it was coming out on home video. I had just went to the theater to see No Holds Barred, and I was like, you know, decent. Real campy for its era, but then again, it was the 1980s. So I was like, okay, what we're going to see here with Rowdy Roddy Piper and They Live. So, I look at this film, and it's a very well done. It's not the stereotypical wrestling film, or a film starring a wrestler. It's not the stereotypical film at all. Piper plays this guy, I think his name is Nada. He comes into town looking for work, like a lot of working class people in America, just struggling to make a living. He meets up with Keith David's character, Frank, and as the two get to know each other, the philosophical differences between these two. Piper is more optimistic and hopeful, while Keith David's character, Frank, is a lot more pessimistic. And to be honest, I related more, not just because he was a black man, but I related more with Keith David, although I respected the viewpoint of Nada, because I think that hopeful, optimistic attitude is what we would prefer to have. But realistically, I had to side with Frank, because Frank was more of a realist. But as the film goes on, Piper stumbles onto something, and basically the fireworks start from there. He discovers that aliens have quietly taken over not only the United States of America, but the world, subliminally keeping us asleep, giving us our heart's desires, so they could just keep on quietly ruling the earth. Now, what does that sound like to you? Sounds like one world government conspiracies, don't it? Sounds like NWO, and I'm not talking the wrestling group. Sounds like the New World Order, doesn't it? That's why I say this movie really had a realistic, had a real deep thought message. They are out there. Can you see them? And many people are asleep to what's going on around. I mean, take a look at, for example, the things I talk about a lot in the black community. Things from that have been passed on from generation to generation in the black community, from the days of slavery, attitudes, certain behaviors, certain actions that were first put on by white supremacist slave masters. And yet, even though we know we shouldn't do that, we do it anyway, because that's what we've been programmed to do. On a bigger non-racial scale, the world government, or the United States government more specifically, we live in a we want it now, we gotta have it in an instant. Gone are the days of actually having to work and build something that could last several generations. We gotta have everything quickly, instantly. Meanwhile, the ones that are pushing that narrative onto not just any specific group of people, just about everybody that pushes that narrative onto people, they're building. And while your little instant quick and easy goes away quick and easy, the institutions they've built will still be around, while yours will fade into memory. I think that's the message that this movie was portraying and was trying to cultivate. And I didn't understand that until I became an adult. I thought it was just alien invaders. Like, wow, this is sophisticated. But it had a deeper message than that. On the surface, it looks like one of those secret invasion type of movies. You know, science fiction, which it was a sci-fi. That's why it's a sci-fi cult classic. What's ironic is, right before the death of Piper, I had just watched this film again on the El Rey Network about 2 weeks ago. And it made me think about that watching it again. Not to mention, I did like some of the action sequences, such as when Piper beat up the 2 cops. He did take a few tactics from pro wrestling, but he used ones that realistically could be used in real life or in a combat or street fighting situation, such as when the cop tried to take him in, when he pulled him forward, he just simply clotheslined the crap out of the cop using the momentum. And I was like, that's realistic. And then he goes into the bank with the guns and he has the sunglasses on. And everybody that was human, he spares. But everybody that was alien, bye-bye. In which he says the now famous line, "I came here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble gum." And then, of course, the fight with him and Keith David, very, you know, maybe took a little longer than it should have, but like I said, the moves used there. Yes, he did incorporate a couple moves from pro wrestling, but those are actual moves that realistically you would see in a fight. That actually would be useful in a fight, so no issues there. Basically, it was kept down and dirty. I mean, the only high-tech parts were the parts where using the glasses to see the aliens. Everything was pretty much kept pretty much old school, low tech. But that film became such a sci-fi cult classic. Was it a great money maker? Yeah, I'm sure it made good money, but you won't see it on any lists of big blockbusters or anything. But the film, I'd say more so than a lot of bigger and more known films, has probably stood this test of time. Because, as I said, it had a bigger message than just entertainment and just a simple alien invasion. And Roddy Piper in this film was brilliantly written, and he had to have the talent to pull off this character. of Nada. So that's I'm sure I could go deeper to this. I'm sure there's other aspects, but I'd like to get a conversation going down in the comment section. What's your views on this film, They Live? I mean, I would love to see them and read them and even respond to you about them. So that's my brief retrospective on the film They Live, and I hope you enjoyed the music that was playing in the background. Yeah, I know. No, YouTube frowns on using that sort of thing, but I felt it was just appropriate to use this theme while talking about this movie. So that's my edition, well, this edition of Random Thoughts. I'm Irvin Griffin, and once again, rest in peace, Rodney Townes, better known as Rowdy Roddy Piper.